Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Killjoys. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we have Team Awesome Force being in a prison. I love that, you have them trying to, take down some guards. They're trying to escape. Dutch doesn't even get down one guard completely before she gets taken down. Johnny's like, well, you get E for effort. So she gets put in solitary. The warden has a meeting with Davin and Johnny separately. And I love Johnny being like, whoa, what do you mean one ship? I've stolen several. Because the fact of the matter is like, no, you're going to get my record right. And you have Davin being like, basically explaining the plot. Yo, we got the lady, we got the Holland, and there's this invasion coming. It's like, you just sound nuts. Hence why he gets put in the psych ward of the prison and everything. But Johnny, being the fast talker he is, he's kind of like, because of my hacking skills and my thieving skills, I could be doing so much more than just doing normal labor. And he ends up kind of being stuck on laundry duty. So that was kind of interesting. I also love the fact is that he ends up stealing a device from one of the guards, and he uses it and puts, that little chip that's kind of everything that is Lucy in it. And it's like, you hear him kind of adjusting the voice because Lucy was sadly reset. But it's like, he's like, hey, Lucy, Nucy, I'm John. And she's kind of like, Jean? And she's not getting it right. He's like, we'll work on it. But it's like, he's slowly but surely getting, Lucy back. It doesn't make up for the years, because they were together for so long. The relationship he has with Lucy, you can't just recreate that. That's kind of lost forever, It's actually super sad when you break it down and think about it like that. It was actually pretty smooth the way Johnny ended up helping Dutch get out of solitary confinement. Also, it's pretty badass seeing her doing those one-handed push-ups like that. It's kind of like, stop showing up, but I guess it's got to keep your mind and body sharp and ready for, when time comes. But I love that. It's like, give her a spoon. I was like, what are you going to do with the spoon? She knocks the guard out, gets his fingerprint, puts on a scanner. I was like, that's actually pretty smart and pretty damn smooth. That's actually pretty dope, that the way that kind of went down. Davin had to get shocked by one of those halo things. And it's like, if you weren't kind of a little scattered beforehand, those things will definitely scatter your brain. So I was like, hey, they managed to get out, but, they end up getting caught by the warden again, which even the warden's like, I'm kind of being paid to keep you alive. And technically, I'm only supposed to keep one of you alive. But it's like, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back and take you to a less extreme, prison, part of the wing of the prison called G-Wing. So they basically have to help this dude named Sparlow not get killed because there's an assassination attempt against him. And I love how Dutch is so damn cool. I don't know if I've stressed that enough over the course of the series. I mean, it's not like it needs to be stretched, but just even that meeting with Sparlow, bringing him the apple and everything, it's like, is this poison? I love the guy being like, I'll taste it. No, she'll taste it. And she does, and he's got the knife to her throat. She tastes the knife. It's like, and holds it against him. It's like, dude, Dutch is like the epitome of cool. She always has been, It's like, okay, so, or work for you, and, that whole thing, setting that up in motion, but it doesn't work long because Korn shows up and he exposes him as Killjoys. I love it. And he's like, usually you have, what is it, that your weird sister wives with you, and he turns and sees Davin and Johnny, and they both look at him and say, hey, so that was pretty nice. And that turns into a whole complicated thing. And I love the warden stepping in and be like, it didn't take long for you to cock that up. It's like you kind of pretty much screwed everything up. But I love Dutch being like, that's kind of our thing. We fail until we don't. It's like, I love people who have mentalities like that. Yeah, it looks like we're screwing up from the outside, but really it's all a part of the plan because we're screwing up until we don't, because then we rock it, That's what Team Awesome Force do. I just love that aspect of it. But I do like that they do investigate. They're keeping an eye on to this whole Sparlow situation, trying to figure out who's going after him. I love that whole conversation between Davin and Dutch. That's so good. It's like, we should probably, talk about some things, because Davin, he finally has that conversation with Johnny. He's like, if anyone should feel awkward about it, he's like, it should be me. Like, you and Dutch were married. I mean, you and Dutch have always been close. But then there's a whole conversation. Davin's like, Rain's kind of messed with a lot of people's head, false memories and stuff like that. And Dutch is like, yeah, I understand. It's like, yeah, people, kind of remember things, things are a little complicated. It's like, this is kind of a tough time for Johnny. She's like, yeah, I get it. Johnny lost the love of his life, and Dad is looking like, oh yeah, I guess, yeah, would you say the love is life? He's like, yeah. And she's like, me too. She's like, I feel like I've lost a part of my heart. And Davin's like, so you want to be with Johnny? Dutch is like, what? He's like, wait, what are we talking about? She's like, I'm talking about Lucy. And he's like, oh, right. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And she's like, Davin still hasn't explained the situation, just because it's a little awkward, because even admit, he's like, oh, it's nice to kind of just, kick it with you, just like under normal circumstances, and then kind of got into the whole thing about the rain. But it's so interesting that neither one of them wants to have that conversation, because like I said, even Davin can recognize it. I think Dutch might be picking up on it, because at certain points where like, Johnny's kind of closer, he gets a little awkward. He never was like, as you tell, he's not even making like sexual jokes and puns and stuff around her like he normally is, because he's super uncomfortable. Because like, yeah, he's always cared for Dutch, but not in that way. But now that window, because it's like they've always had a very close relationship, but they've never crossed that line. But the moment you cross that line, it makes things a little weird, and it's like it's hard to go back to having that brotherly sister relationship, because that was someone that he was in love with. But he's always loved her, but never like that. And now that he's crossed over like that, because of like his head being messed with, it makes him feel weird. Because just like the lady had brought up like last episode, is it on some level what he wanted? So there's that. It is kind of sad to find out that the potential assassin behind is Calvert, because it's like, hey, Davin had made a friend in prison. That was kind of pretty dope. But they luckily were able to save Sparlow. She's actually pretty damn tough. It took all three of them working together to take her down. And even then, they were still kind of getting their asses handed to them at moments. So that was dealt with. It turns out Corin's the one that sent her, which is like, now that they're still in prison, I'm sure that's something they're still going to have to deal with. I actually don't remember what he's from. That seems like some earlier season stuff. Like, that probably seems like some season 1 or season 2 stuff, because it has to be. I feel like more so than that, probably like a season 1 thing, just because I don't remember that far back. Just because it's been a while since I've rewatched the earlier season. So, but regardless, I feel like that's going to be a plot point that kind of continues for a little bit, especially because he's kind of gunning for them. But luckily with the Barlow's situation, it's like, yeah, they've kind of got his protection, and he owes them a favor in the future, which obviously Dutch, the warden is like, okay, you can move to June, but she's like, no, we'll stay where we are. So because Dutch is like, we're not prepared to go against a lady. Lady is not only powerful enough on her own, like the fact of the matter is her reach goes so far. How we're supposed to fight someone who literally is on top of everything power wise? It's like, we need to kind of amass our army. So they're planning to take over the prison. Davin and Dutch are in one cell, and Johnny's kind of alone, kind of gonna have to make friends on his own. He has Lucy, but Lucy isn't Lucy, and I hope in some shape or form he can recover Lucy. I don't think it's going to be possible, but I hope in some shape or form they can bring that back. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I hope they do. So there's that side of things with Team Awesome Force. On the other side of things, we have Zeph finally finding her way back to her undercover lab. And I love, of course, Zeph being the future thought person that she is, she set up a video ahead of time, be like, yo, you don't remember making this video and stuff because of what happened to you. Fact of the matter is, jam this into your neck, and it's like, boom, she remembers. I even love her making that line of like, it's perfectly safe, I'm fine, I can't taste cheese anymore, but still, so there's that. Then she does it to turn, which I love, like her being like, oh, I got something that will blow your mind. He's like, yeah, I don't want stinky raincoat sex. She's like, first of all, that's offensive. 2, whatever, stabs him in the neck. He's like, what the hell? Who do I got to arrest because of it? Like, who do I got to basically reprimand because this whole thing went to shit? And she's hugging Turner, like, hey! And then next, who they wake up? Pre. And it's like, and it's so interesting hearing Pre talk about the fact is that, like, oh yeah, like I was actually really good at being the top dog of the rack, which I didn't realize that's what role he was playing. I didn't realize he was touring under these circumstances. So that's pretty interesting. They're looking for Team Awesome Force, but sadly, but interestingly enough, they end up stumbling across Black Root ships. But it turns out these Black Root ships aren't just an army thing, like, part of her army. It turns out they're actually how the lady is dispersing the rain, because they dump chemicals into the clouds, and that sends out the rain, forgetful rain, whatever the case you want to call it. But that was kind of pretty interesting. detail to kind of set that whole thing up. And I thought was really interesting is like Turin was suggesting, like, why don't we leave and find help, maybe Leith or something like that. But it's like, no, we can't, because the fact of the matter is the terraforming is so big on Westerly now that it has to be seen from the outside. But the fact is that no one's showed up yet means they don't give a shit, especially like the rest of the 9, because like Delsea was supposed to meet with them last season, because obviously there was one of the 9 that Turin had met with like in season 4's finale. But obviously that didn't work out. But for them, it's like they don't care, because it's like, oh, whatever's happening on Westerly, it won't affect us, which it will, because the lady's going to conquer the quad. But it's like, I mean, let's not forget the Holland literally came to the quad because, well, I mean, they were there because of the whole Arkin thing, but they're mainly also here because the 9 let them in. They made a deal a long, long, long time ago. That was kind of like a big part to this whole Holland situation. But nevertheless, they end up destroying actually quite a few of her ships. It was like, what, like 3% of like her ships in that area or whatever were destroyed in that particular zone, but they ended up taking out a lot of her ships, so that was pretty dope. It's interesting too, because like there's a whole conversation with Klein and everything. I thought it was kind of interesting, because the lady was basically asking the whole thing of like, oh, are you a good father? Because Klein has said like any father would want his daughter to kind of be okay. He's like, any good father, the lady corrects, and it's like, are you a good father? Klein doesn't answer that, because it's a very complicated question, because yes, he looks back on what he did as not being a good father, but he did what he needed to do. I'm sure it both applies to both Anila and Dutch, that he wasn't the best father, especially when it comes to Dutch, all the stuff he put her through to prepare her for what's to come, the whole fighting the lady situation. But I do like that the lady kind of brings up the fact is that, because I love Klein kind of jokes about the fact is, it's like, well, your species literally got wiped out before, so, I mean, you're not that hard to get rid of. But it's a whole thing. Oh, what was the whole conversation exactly? It's like, right, do you know the difference between your species and mine? He's like, well, I could say the whole wanting to wipe out, other existences and stuff like that, but he was like, but I know my own species. But essentially, it's a conversation that's come up before. Memory, in particular, emotions to memories. That's not like those connections. That's not something that her species, the lady in her species, ever had. That's kind of part of the reason why they died out, because like humans have the potential to remember, and there's emotional connections to that to kind of bring them together. Like basically they hold on so steadfast to their past that they're always kind of holding on to it, and because they're so obsessed with their past, they can always look, it makes them very observant and always looking forward and hopeful and dreaming about what their future can be. And for her people, that's an aspect that's lost on them. It's a thing of kind of like, when you don't have that connective tissue of like this emotional memory, it keeps memories kind of longer and stronger. That's why like her species kind of basically almost fade to obscurity, to the point that because they didn't have that connection, and I guess they were kind of almost like we do our own thing and we have no emotional ties to each other. So when one falls, we just keep moving on. But humans, they don't forget like that. They hold on. Those memories are stronger when there's emotion tied to it. But sadly, because of all that, because of becoming more human-like, because of that emotional memory, it's kind of a double-edged sword for the lady in her species, because for her it's like, I don't get it how you humans deal with all this, because for them, for her in particular, this is the first time she's ever had to really deal with emotions, and it's just kind of like, no, that's weird. It's for her, it's a little overwhelming. Even Klein saying like, is this really what you want for your species? But for her, it's like, the fact of the matter is we control people's memories, so we have complete and utter control of them. That was her whole mentality. That's why she controls Westerly the way she does, because if I can warp your memories in whatever way I can, I've got you. But the fact of the matter is, Klein is like, you're thinking that it's just memories that make us so resilient, because it's not that. It's actually hope. Hope is what keeps them going no matter what the circumstances may be. Even when the going gets tough, when the odds seem stacked against them, that's what pushes them forward. Because obviously she's pissed because she found out like, oh, who else is awake? Find out who's awake. I don't care what you do. Like I said, she's getting angry and angrier. Like she's losing control of her emotions and kind of getting the best of her. So I thought that's pretty dope. I also love that line from Pre where he was like, oh, let's wake up Garrett. But it's like, no, the less people that are awake, the better. And it's that whole thing of like, he doesn't know whether Garrett's better, under the cloud of the lady or Cindy, so because obviously it's a thing of Pre being like, I got to get my man back, I got to get my husband back, that's a whole complicated thing, kind of much like everyone else had to deal with of like, oh, here's a person you love, but they don't know about your connection and your history, so that's going to be a little awkward. So I'm sure they're going to still be playing the role of like, oh, we're still, being controlled and everything. So obviously they took this did a heavy blow to the lady being able to kind of produce the ring at the very least as frequently, but there's measures that can be taken to kind of cover it up. Even Klein kind of suggested some to kind of compensate for the fact that the black root ships with the whole modified rain substance that kind of makes people forget, till that's kind of, those ships are made new and stuff. So I'm curious to see where everything goes from here. I'm curious, are they going to wake any more people up? Like how Davin, Dutch, and Johnny's whole situation of potentially owning that prison. I'm assuming Sparlow is going to have something to do with that. That's going to be the favor, potentially. We'll see. Also, how you going to... It's going to be interesting seeing them take over a whole prison because they need an army, especially considering the fact is most of their army, most of the people in Westerly are under spells. So I'm sure that's going to include, Fancy, which we got to get your boy Fancy back. Like I said, either way, I'm very interested to see where all this ultimately takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.